Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a topic that I think is close to all of our hearts, and that is what makes schools truly effective.
Yeah.
You've sent us a whole stack of research on this, and it looks like we're going to be spending some quality time with Robert J. Marzano's work,
Yes.
among others.
Right.
It seems like everyone has an opinion on education, but we're here to look beyond the hot takes
That's right.
and to see what the data actually says.
Yeah.
So get ready to explore the world of academic achievement,
Okay.
from classroom strategies to surprising school-wide factors that you might not have considered.
Right.
Who knows, maybe we'll even uncover some insights that can help all of us
Yeah.
become better learners no matter what stage of life we're in.
It's interesting, because there's a lot of negativity out there about public education, but Marzano's research takes a more optimistic view.
Okay,
He argues that schools can have a powerful impact on student success,
interesting.
and the evidence is pretty compelling.
That is intriguing because I know a lot of the doubt around school effectiveness stems from reports like the Coleman Report,
Right.
which seem to downplay the role of schools. Can you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, you're right. The Coleman Report and studies, it did stirk a lot of debate. They focused on this idea of percentage of variance,
Uh-huh.
which is essentially trying to measure how much schools actually contribute to student achievement. And the findings suggested that it was a pretty low percentage, like around 10%. And naturally, people started saying, well, if schools only account for 10%, do they even really matter?
Right.
But here's the thing, that interpretation misses a crucial point.
I'm all ears. What are we missing?
It's all about perspective. You see, Marzano uses this tool called the binomial effect size display,
Okay.
or the BESD, to illustrate the impact more clearly. So let's say you have a test where typically you would expect 50% of students to pass.
Okay.
The BESD tells us that in a less effective school, that pass rate could plummet to just 27.6%, but in a highly effective school, it could skyrocket to 72.4%.
Wow.
So we're not just talking about a minor boost here. We're talking about nearly tripling the number of students who succeed.
Yeah, that's a game changer.
Yeah, it really is.
That really reframes the whole discussion.
It does.
It's not that schools are powerless. It's that effective schools have a tremendous influence.
Exactly.
So let's dive into what makes a school effective.
Okay.
Marzano pinpoints 5 key factors at the school level.
All right.
And the first one is having a guaranteed and viable curriculum.
Okay.
What does that actually mean in practice?
It's fascinating because on the surface, it seems like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
Of course, schools have a curriculum, but E.D. Hirsch, in his book, Cultural Literacy, points out something really thought-provoking.
Okay.
He tells a story about a superintendent who asked his principals to describe what content each grade level was supposed to cover.
Okay.
And guess what? None of them could actually articulate it clearly.
Oh, wow.
It's like assuming everyone in a bakery is following the same recipe,
Right.
but then realizing no one actually knows the exact ingredients or steps.
That's a recipe for some pretty inconsistent pastries.
Yeah.
And I imagine it leads to just as much inconsistency in what students learn.
Exactly. This lack of clarity creates a huge gap between the intended curriculum, what's actually taught in classrooms, and what students ultimately learn.
Right.
Marzano calls this the opportunity to learn problem, and it has a major impact on achievement.
So it's not enough to just have a curriculum in name only. It needs to be well-defined and consistently implemented across classrooms.
Precisely. And there's another layer to this. We need to consider whether the curriculum is realistic in terms of the time teachers have to teach it.
Okay.
Often, state standards cram way too many topics into a year, leaving teachers feeling rushed and students feeling overwhelmed. A study called TIMSS, which compared different education systems around the world,
Uh-huh.
found that U.S. math textbooks cover a whopping 350% more topics than Japanese textbooks.
That's a staggering difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference.
It sounds like we're asking teachers to do the impossible, trying to cram a gallon of information into a pint glass.
It's a good analogy, and Marzano's solution is to prioritize.
Okay.
He advocates for identifying the truly essential content for each subject, the core knowledge and skills that are absolutely critical for students to master.
Uh-huh.
He even outlines a detailed process for determining this essential content.
So it's about quality over quantity.
Yes.
And once you've pinpointed that essential content, it seems like the next step would be safeguarding the time teachers have to teach it.
Absolutely. Marzano emphasizes minimizing disruptions and interruptions during class time. There's a funny anecdote in the book, The Teaching Gap, where Japanese teachers were observing a U.S. classroom
Okay.
and were utterly bewildered by an interruption during instruction.
Oh my goodness.
To them, it was completely unthinkable to break the flow of learning like that.
It highlights a real difference in priorities.
It does.
So a clear, well-defined curriculum and protected teaching time, those are 2 big takeaways.
Yes.
What's the next school-level factor we should be looking at?
The next one is all about setting the bar high and providing the support students need to reach it.
Okay.
Challenging goals and effective feedback.
That sounds like a winning combination. I'm guessing it goes beyond just giving students letter grades.
You got it. This factor emphasizes setting clear, ambitious goals for both teachers and students when everyone knows what they're aiming for.
Uh-huh.
It creates a sense of purpose that drives performance, but equally important is providing effective feedback, not just grades, but specific timely insights that help students understand where they're excelling and where they need to improve.
So it's about guidance, not just judgment.
Exactly. Researchers Black and William found that formative assessment, which is feedback given during the learning process,
Right.
can have a massive impact on student achievement. They calculated an effect size of zero point 0.7, which, to put that in perspective, is equivalent to boosting a country's math scores into the top 5 internationally.
That's a powerful testament to the importance of good feedback.
Yeah.
But from what I've read, Marzano isn't a huge fan of standardized tests as the primary means of feedback.
Rightly so, standardized tests are more about summative assessment,
Okay.
evaluating learning at the end of a unit or year.
Right.
They don't really provide the kind of specific, actionable feedback that students need to truly grow.
So what's the alternative?
Marzano suggests something like quarterly feedback reports that track progress on specific knowledge and skills.
Okay.
Instead of just seeing an overall grade in maths, imagine a report card that shows a student's mastery level in fractions, algebra, geometry, and so on.
Now that would be valuable information.
Right.
For everyone involved, it could really help personalize learning and tailor instruction.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got a strong curriculum, protected time, and meaningful feedback.
Right.
What's the next piece of the puzzle?
Let's zoom out a bit and consider the bigger picture. Marzano's third factor is parental and community involvement.
Okay.
He emphasizes that schools don't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
They're part of a larger ecosystem, and that community plays a vital role in supporting student success.
I think we all intuitively understand that.
Yeah.
But what does it look like in action?
When parents and the wider community are actively engaged with the school, it creates a sense of shared responsibility for students' well-being and academic progress.
Uh-huh.
This can manifest in so many ways, from reduced absenteeism to increased financial support for school programs.
So it's about fostering a sense of ownership and partnership.
Absolutely. And Marzano breaks down community involvement into 3 key elements.
Okay.
Communication, day-to-day involvement, and governance structures.
Okay.
Communication can encompass everything from regular newsletters and parent-teacher conferences to online platforms that facilitate information sharing.
Right.
Day-to-day involvement might include parents volunteering in the library, local businesses sponsoring field trips, or community members mentoring students.
Right.
And when it comes to governance, it's about ensuring that parents and community members have a voice in shaping school policies and decisions.
It sounds like a multifaceted approach, really weaving the school into the fabric of the community. And I imagine technology plays a big role in facilitating these connections.
Definitely school websites, online forums, virtual parent-teacher conferences.
Right.
These tools have made it easier than ever to stay connected and informed.
Right.
But while technology can enhance communication, it's important to remember that face-to-face interactions are still incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
There's something powerful about seeing parents in the classroom working alongside teachers and students building those personal relationships.
It really makes it feel like a team effort.
It does.
Okay, so we've got a strong curriculum, protected teaching, time, meaningful feedback, and an engaged community.
Right.
What's the next ingredient in the recipe for an effective school?
Let's talk about a factor that might seem obvious at first glance, but it goes much deeper than you might think.
Okay.
Safe and orderly environment.
I have a feeling this is about more than just physical safety.
You're right. While physical safety is fundamental, it's only the foundation. This factor is about creating an environment where students feel emotionally safe, where they can focus on learning without fear of disruption, bullying, or chaos.
So it's about fostering a sense of predictability and consistency, minimizing anxiety, and maximizing focus.
Exactly. And Marzano talks about using ecological interventions.
Okay.
Simple strategies to minimize disruptions and improve the overall flow of the school day.
Okay.
For instance, Nelson Martella and Galland in their research found that something as simple as mixing grade levels at recess could reduce congestion and conflicts.
I love that.
It's about paying attention to those seemingly small details that can have a big impact on the overall atmosphere.
Sometimes the most effective solutions are the simplest, but of course a safe and orderly environment also requires clear rules and consequences. What's Marzano's take on discipline?
He advocates for a balanced approach. There's been debate about whether any form of punishment is detrimental,
Right.
but the research actually supports using a variety of techniques, including consequences when applied fairly and consistently.
It's about setting clear boundaries, but always maintaining respect and understanding.
Exactly, and it's not just about reacting to misbehavior. Arzano also emphasizes the importance of early detection systems to identify students who might be at risk of violence or other problems.
Uh-huh.
Research by Tobin and Sugai revealed a strong correlation between certain behaviors in grade 6 and violent behavior in grade 8. The earlier we can intervene, the better equipped we are to provide support and prevent those problems from escalating.
It's about being proactive and creating a culture of care and support. Okay, so we've covered 4 factors: a strong curriculum-protected teaching, time-meaningful feedback,
Right.
a supportive community, and a safe environment. What's the final piece of the puzzle?
The last one might surprise you because it focuses on the interactions between teachers,
Okay,
collegiality, and professionalism.
okay.
It highlights the importance of a positive staff culture where teachers feel valued, respected, and empowered to collaborate.
So it's not just about the relationship between teachers and students, but also the relationships among the teachers themselves.
Precisely, and research shows that this can have a real impact on student outcomes. Friedkin and Slater found that teachers who engaged in meaningful professional dialogue discussing teaching strategies, sharing best practices,
Right.
had a greater positive influence on student achievement than those who simply interacted as friends.
It makes sense. It's about fostering a culture of continuous improvement where everyone is learning from each other and striving to get better.
Exactly, and a key ingredient in this is teacher efficacy, the belief that teachers can genuinely make a difference in their students' lives. When teachers feel supported and valued, their efficacy increases, and that translates into more effective teaching.
So how do we cultivate this sense of efficacy and encourage ongoing professional development?
Marzano points to the Japanese practice of lesson study as a highly effective model.
Okay.
It involves teams of teachers collaboratively planning, observing, and refining specific lessons. It's very hands-on and practical, directly addressing the challenges teachers face in their classrooms.
It's not just about abstract theories. It's about putting those theories into practice and learning from each other's experiences.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground when it comes to school-level factors, but I know there's more to the story.
There is.
What happens when we zoom in on the individual teacher?
That's where things get really interesting because while these school-level factors are crucial, research suggests that the individual teacher actually has an even greater impact on student achievement. In fact, the effect of a single teacher can sometimes outweigh the effect of an entire school.
Wow, that's incredible. So even if a student is in a less than ideal school, a fantastic teacher can still be a game changer.
Absolutely. And to understand how teachers wield this incredible power, we need to look at the 3 main categories. Marzano outlines instructional strategies, classroom management, and classroom curriculum design, but that's a deep dive for our next segment.
All right, so we're zooming in on the individual teacher now.
Right.
The person at the front of the classroom shaping young minds. This is where the magic happens. Wouldn't you say?
You could definitely say that, and the research backs it up. It turns out that individual teachers have an even greater impact on student achievement than all those school-level factors we just talked about.
Wow.
It's a bit like the difference between having a great recipe and having a truly skilled chef.
That makes sense. You could have the best ingredients in the world, but if you don't know how to use them, the dish won't turn out right.
Right.
So let's talk about those ingredients, those teacher-level factors that Marzano identifies.
Okay.
He focuses on 3 main areas: instructional strategies, classroom management, and classroom curriculum design. Where should we start?
Well, instructional strategies are a great place to begin.
Okay.
This is all about the techniques teachers use to engage students and make learning happen. It's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Okay, so spill the beans. What are some of the most effective instructional strategies that teachers can use? Is there a secret formula?
If only it were that simple, there isn't one magic bullet. But thankfully, years of research have given us a wealth of evidence-based strategies. William Bennett, for example, compiled a list of over 40 research-backed practices that can make a real difference in the classroom.
Wow, 40. That sounds a little overwhelming. Is there a way to make sense of all these different strategies?
Absolutely. Researchers like John Hattie have done a fantastic job of categorizing these strategies into broader frameworks,
Okay.
making them much more user-friendly for teachers.
Okay.
Some key categories include setting clear learning goals using effective questioning techniques and incorporating collaborative learning.
Right.
And within each category, you have a whole toolbox of specific strategies to choose from.
So it's like having a well-stocked toolkit
Yes.
and then choosing the right tool for the job depending on the subject matter, the students, and the learning goals.
Exactly. It's about being adaptable and responsive.
Okay.
And another helpful way to think about effective instruction is through Madeline Hunter's lesson design framework. It provides a clear structure for planning and delivering lessons in a way that maximizes student learning.
I've heard of that. It's all about having a well-defined sequence for the lesson, right?
Yeah,
Like setting the stage, presenting new information guiding practice, providing independent practice, and then wrapping it up with review and assessment.
it's like having a roadmap for your lesson,
Right.
ensuring that all the key elements of effective instruction are in place.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, even with the most brilliant instructional strategies, things can fall apart if the classroom environment isn't conducive to learning.
Right.
And that's where classroom management comes in.
Okay, let's talk about that. Every teacher knows that classroom management can make or break your day. What are some of the keys to creating a classroom that's both productive and positive?
Well, it all starts with clarity. Establishing clear rules and procedures for every aspect of classroom life is essential.
Uh-huh.
Everything from how students enter the room to how they ask questions, how they transition between activities, and how they work in groups. Having routines in place minimizes disruptions and creates a sense of predictability that frees up mental space for learning.
It's like setting the ground rules for a game when everyone knows how to play and what's expected of them, the game runs smoothly.
Exactly. And just as important as those clear expectations is the relationship between the teacher and the students. Cultivating positive teacher-student relationships is paramount.
Okay.
It's not about being friends, but about creating a dynamic where students feel respected, supported, and challenged to do their best.
So striking that balance between being a firm authority figure and a caring mentor.
Precisely, research by Wobbles and colleagues found that the most effective teachers are those who are both moderately dominant and moderately cooperative.
Okay.
It's about finding that sweet spot, being clear and in control while also being collaborative and supportive.
It makes sense. You need both structure and warmth to create a thriving learning environment.
Right.
Now, what about the elephant in the room, discipline?
Yeah.
There's always been a debate about the best approach to discipline in the classroom. What does the research say?
Marzano, based on the research, he's analyzed advocates for a balanced approach.
Okay.
Some people believe that any form of punishment is detrimental,
Right.
but the evidence suggests that a variety of techniques can be effective, including consequences when they're applied fairly and consistently.
So it's not about being punitive, but about having clear boundaries and helping students understand the natural consequences of their actions.
Right, and it's not just about reacting to misbehavior. Marzano also stresses the importance of being proactive.
Okay.
He points to the need for early detection systems to identify students who might be struggling or who might be at risk of engaging in harmful behaviors.
It's about catching those warning signs early on and providing support before a situation escalates.
Exactly. For example, Tobin and Sugai conducted research that revealed a strong correlation between certain behaviors in 6th grade and violent behavior in 8th grade. If we can identify those early indicators and intervene effectively, we can potentially prevent some of those negative outcomes down the road.
That's powerful. It's about creating a safety net, not just for physical safety, but for emotional and social well-being.
Yeah,
Okay, so we've talked about instructional strategies and classroom management.
right.
What's the third piece of the teacher effectiveness puzzle?
The final area Marzano delves into is classroom curriculum design.
Okay.
This is where the individual teacher goes beyond simply following a prescribed textbook and takes ownership of shaping the learning experience for their students.
So it's about bringing their own creativity and expertise to the table, adapting and customizing the curriculum to fit their students' needs.
Exactly. And it's interesting because the TIMSS study, which we mentioned earlier, highlighted a tendency in U.S. schools to rely heavily on textbooks.
Right.
Effective teachers, however, recognize that a textbook is just one resource among many. They use their professional judgment to select and organize content in a way that's both engaging and meaningful for their particular group of students.
It's about being thoughtful and intentional, not just going through the motions. Now, I know there's been a big push in recent years towards constructivist teaching approaches. How does that fit into the picture?
The constructivist movement has definitely influenced how we think about curriculum design. It emphasizes active learning, student-centered approaches, and creating opportunities for students to construct their own understanding.
So it's a shift away from the traditional model of the teacher as the sage on the stage lecturing and dispensing knowledge. It's more about guiding and facilitating learning.
Yes, but Marzano cautions against taking this too far.
Okay.
He emphasizes that even in a constructivist classroom, there needs to be a clear structure and a defined set of learning goals.
Okay.
It can't just be a free-for-all.
Right. There needs to be a framework. So how do effective teachers strike that balance between providing structure and fostering student-driven exploration?
Marzano draws on some fascinating insights from cognitive psychology to guide curriculum design. One key principle is the importance of identifying the specific types of knowledge that are the focus of a unit or lesson.
So it's about being crystal clear about what you want students to learn, right? What are the essential concepts and skills they need to walk away with?
Precisely. And Marzano points out that even seemingly simple topics can have surprisingly complex underlying structures.
Okay,
He uses the example of fractions.
okay.
To truly understand fractions, students need to charge not just the basic concept, but also the relationships between fractions and decimals, different types of fractions, and so on. It's about understanding the nuances and connections.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. There's always more depths to uncover.
Exactly. And another key principle from cognitive psychology is that learning is enhanced when students engage in tasks that allow for effective transfer of knowledge.
Okay.
In other words, we want students to be able to apply what they've learned in new and different contexts.
This is about making those connections, right? Helping students see how what they're learning in the classroom relates to the real world.
Yes, and a key concept here is sameness.
Okay.
The more sameness there is between the learning task and the real-world application, the more likely students are to successfully transfer their knowledge.
So it's about designing learning experiences that are relevant and relatable, that spark students' curiosity and make them want to learn more.
Absolutely, and stories and narratives can be incredibly powerful tools for achieving this.
Okay.
Stories have a way of capturing our attention and making information stick.
They help us make sense of the world and connect with information on a deeper level.
Exactly. And finally, when it comes to curriculum design, effective teachers understand the distinction between declarative knowledge and procedural knowledge.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the difference?
Declarative knowledge is knowledge about facts and concepts, things.
Okay.
For example, knowing that the capital of France is Paris is declarative knowledge. Procedural knowledge, on the other hand, is knowledge about how to do things, skills, and processes.
Okay.
Knowing how to ride a bike is an example of procedural knowledge.
That makes sense. So it's the difference between knowing something and knowing how to do something.
Precisely, and effective teachers recognize that these two types of knowledge require different instructional approaches. You wouldn't teach someone to ride a bike by giving them a lecture about bicycles, right? You'd get them on a bike and let them practice.
That's a great point. It highlights the importance of hands-on learning and active engagement.
Exactly. And the same principle applies to teaching academic content. Sometimes direct instruction and explanation are necessary, but often students need opportunities to experiment, explore, and apply what they're learning in hands-on ways.
It's about finding the right balance, providing the scaffolding and support students need, while also giving them the freedom to discover and create. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from school-level factors to the nuances of individual teacher effectiveness. It seems like we have all the pieces of the puzzle now. How do we put it all together and actually create meaningful change in schools? So we've explored the power of effective schools and really kind of taken a deep dive into the incredible influence of individual teachers.
Yeah.
It's been quite a journey, but now comes the real challenge.
Yeah.
How do we translate all this research into actual tangible improvements in education?
Right.
It feels a bit like having all these amazing ingredients and a well-equipped kitchen,
Yeah.
but still needing that recipe to bring it all together. What's Marzano's take on actually putting these ideas into action?
Well, it's a great analogy, and he does offer a roadmap for change.
Okay.
He proposes a model for school reform.
Okay.
But the good news is it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Okay.
He acknowledges that every school is unique, facing its own set of challenges and opportunities.
So it's not about imposing a rigid show of rules, but rather about empowering schools to find solutions that work for them.
Exactly. Marzano's model is a four-phase process.
Okay.
That begins with a thorough assessment of the school's current state.
All right.
This involves gathering data on everything from curriculum alignment to teacher collegiality, student achievement to parental involvement.
So it's like giving the entire school a comprehensive checkup, identifying both the areas that are thriving and the areas that need attention.
Precisely. And once the school has a clear understanding of its strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
it can move on to phase 2, which is all about selecting specific interventions based on the research we've been discussing.
Okay.
This might involve implementing new instructional strategies, revising the curriculum, strengthening teacher collaboration, or boosting parental involvement.
So it's about using the research as a guide, but also tailoring those solutions to fit the school's unique context.
Absolutely. What works in one school might not work in another. It's about finding the right fit. And once the interventions are in place,
Okay.
phase 3 kicks in, which focuses on monitoring their implementation and evaluating their impact.
This is where data plays a crucial role, right? Making sure that these changes are actually moving the needle and leading to real improvements.
Exactly. Schools need to collect and analyze data from various sources, including standardized tests, classroom assessments, teacher observations, and even surveys of students and parents.
Right.
It's about being data-driven, making sure those interventions are having the desired effect.
So it's a dynamic process. If the data shows that an intervention isn't working, the school can adjust course or try a different approach.
That's the beauty of it. It's a continuous cycle of improvement, always striving to get better.
Right.
And then once an intervention is proven successful, the school can move on to the next challenge, tackling issues one step at a time. It's about making steady progress.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. But even with the best model in place, I imagine leadership plays a crucial role in driving this kind of change.
You're absolutely right. The principal's leadership is paramount. Research has consistently shown that the principal's leadership style has a huge impact on a school's overall effectiveness.
So what are the hallmarks of an effective school leader? What qualities should we be looking for?
Well, effective school leaders tend to be accessible and approachable,
Okay,
creating an environment where teachers feel comfortable sharing idea and concerns.
right.
They're also highly collaborative, involving teachers in decision-making processes and empowering them to take ownership of their work.
It's about building trust and creating a shared sense of purpose.
Exactly. And a key quality that often gets overlooked is optimism.
Okay,
Effective school leaders genuinely believe in the potential of their schools and their staff.
right.
They inspire others with their positive energy and their unwavering belief that things can get better.
That makes sense. Enthusiasm is contagious. When the leader is passionate and optimistic, it sets the tone for the entire school community.
It's a ripple effect, and ultimately, successful school reform boils down to a shared commitment to continuous improvement. The principal sets the tone, but everyone from teachers to students to parents needs to be on board working together to make the school the best it can be.
It's a collective effort, a shared journey of growth and discovery. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today exploring this multifaceted world of effective schools.
We have.
We've looked at school-level factors, delved into the intricacies of teacher effectiveness, and even touched on that crucial role of leadership.
Right.
It's been an eye-opening exploration, to say the least. What stood out to you as the most impactful factor? What questions does this raise about your own learning experiences or the schools in your community?
It's a lot to think about, isn't it?
It really is, and it's important to remember that this is just the beginning of the conversation. There's so much more to learn and explore when it comes to education. This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. It's clear that there's no simple solution, but the research offers us a roadmap for creating positive change. And ultimately, it all comes down to a shared commitment to continuous improvement, a belief in the power of education to transform lives, and a willingness to work together to make that vision a reality. So keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking questions. And together, let's build a brighter future for all learners.